balance. Hitler's Nazis occupy the mainland. Together with its allies, America is spearheading the fight. It's 6 a.m. on the French coast. 8 companies of American troops, the first wave, wait to go into battle. As they approach the landing beach, codenamed Omaha, hundreds of men are praying, knowing that what awaits them is a wall of guns, a killing zone, and possibly death. The men will have to cross the exposed beach under continuous machine gun fire. It's a death zone of 1,000 feet, the length of over 3 football fields. At different stages, they'll face different dangers. For the first 600 feet, they'll have to get past obstacles, like hedgehogs and snakes. At 800 feet is a seawall and rows of barbed wire. Then minefields with 17,000 mines. Finally, after 1,000 feet, they'll reach the dunes at the back of the beach. Only then can they start to attack the Germans. If the Allies can get tanks on the beach before the soldiers, they will give cover and can attack the German defenses. But landing craft carrying tanks are vulnerable. They need a way to get tanks ashore on their own. So Allied inventors come up with an ingenious idea. A tank that swims. This is a duplex drive, or DD tank, an amphibious assault vehicle.
The DD tank was the kind of crazy idea that springs up in wartime. It was a Rube Goldbergish device. It was a regular Sherman tank driven by propellers in the water with a canvas screen on it that was held up by pneumatic cylinders. And the crazy thing is, it actually worked.
Don's job is to put a DD tank onto Omaha Beach as part of a group of 32. Once on the beach, there should be a tank every 50 yards, providing cover for the infantry. But there's a problem. The weather's been bad for days, with heavy wind and rain. The Allies can't launch in this. They need better conditions, and soon.
This was bad news for the Allied planners because the invasion could not wait. The Germans would find out about the plans. It was a big problem.
Suddenly, from out in the North Atlantic, comes secret intelligence. Special naval ships. They're not here to fight, but to measure the wind and barometric pressure. They offer clues about what'll happen to the weather 2,000 miles away in the English Channel. And they send back a tiny but crucial piece of information. The readings suggest a break. One day when the weather will improve slightly. June 6th. On June 6th, the weather has improved, but the seas are still heavy. Into these waves, 3 miles from shore, Don Lucy's landing craft launches. Don's tank is afloat and swimming, for now. But the canvas shroud isn't designed to cope with 6-foot waves.
Almost immediately, water started coming over and through the shroud. And the crew started to bail, not only to save the tank, but their own lives.
Once the shroud is breached, the water's impossible to keep out. The tank starts to sink. The crewmen are outside. They have a chance to get out. The driver doesn't. Of 29 DDs actually launched into the sea off Omaha Beach, 27 sink. Of the other tanks that reach the beach, most are destroyed. Because he wasn't in the tank, Don Lucy escapes. but 33 other crew members aren't as lucky. The failure of the amphibious DDs to make it ashore means the men on Omaha Beach are on their own. They'll now have to fight their way across the sand and take out the impregnable gun positions without the tanks to protect them. The Allies want to invade the Normandy beaches. But to reduce the German defenses there, they stage an elaborate ploy, suggesting they will cross the English Channel at its narrowest point, the Pas de Calais. They'll hide the real landing site of the invasion of Europe by creating a fake one. They'll use Maskelyne's tactics to assemble a fake army in southeast England, across from Calais.
They built fake outbuildings, fake landing craft. They even had inflatable tanks. They got General Patton to come and pay several high-profile visits, just in the hope that German espionage would notice that, or indeed with all the fake equipment that a reconnaissance plane would see it and convince them that there was a build-up in that area when in fact it never actually existed.
The Germans fall for the Allies' trickery. In the months before D-Day, the Nazi command moves most of its feared tank divisions and much of the infantry 150 miles away from Normandy to the Pas de Calais. For the American soldiers, the early hours of the invasion of Omaha Beach is pure hell. But it wasn't supposed to be this way. In fact, the Allies had a plan to wipe out all the German defensive forces. At the back of the cliffs, the Germans assembled a vast arsenal of weapons. There are 30 anti-tank guns, 17 heavy mortars, and more than 20 field guns.
These are the kind of fortifications the Germans used to house their weapons. The Allied planners knew the type of weapons that were in here and the power of them, and they had to come up with a plan in order to neutralize them.
Early on the morning of D-Day, Allied planes depart to bomb the German defenses at Omaha Beach. But with low, thick clouds, the bombers have to rely on radar, a relatively recent invention, to hit the coast. The Navy doesn't trust it and is worried about the bombs hitting the Allies' own ships waiting in the ocean.
When the Allied heavy bombers approached the beach, the cloud cover kept them from seeing their actual target. Because of the threat of them actually dropping short and hitting the fleet offshore, they'd been told to delay. Wait until you're certain you're over the beach. Wait for 5, wait for 30 seconds, then drop.
A delay of a few seconds can change everything. For a bomber at 10,000 feet and traveling 150 miles per hour, a 5-second delay means its bombs will miss their target by 1/4 of a mile. A 30-second delay, and it misses by 1.5 miles. 13,000 bombs were dropped that day, but incredibly, not a single one hits Omaha Beach or the guns overlooking it. It's the single biggest failure of the Allied plans for D-Day.
Oh my God, nothing is working.
Defeat seems certain. But behind the German lines, a group of brave civilians are waging a clandestine fight. The French resistance.
In the months before D-Day, the French resistance start to increase their intelligence gathering operation about German troop movements in order to feed it to the Allies.
Resistance spies focus particularly on the new defenses the Germans build along the D-Day beaches. But it's risky business.
There are almost 200,000 Nazi troops looking for any hint of spying. So the French resistance have to start to be creative in the way they go about the intelligence gathering operation.
Artist Robert Duan helps by painting landscapes, placing hidden meaning in his images. He's secretly mapping the German coastal fortifications. Resistance agent Jean Marion sends messages to the Allies via homing pigeon. France to London in just 4 hours. As D-Day approaches, the resistance members step up their actions, sabotaging German communications. They destroy telegraph lines and blow up trains. But as the resistance becomes bolder, the Germans become more vigilant. On the beach, without communications, the Germans find it harder to bring in reinforcements. If only the Allied forces can break through at Omaha. Severely injured by artillery fire, his only refuge is the seawall ahead of him. Some 800 feet along the 1,000-foot-wide beach. Here, the survivors gather, their hopes fading. 9:30 a.m., Omaha Beach. 3 hours into the D-Day invasion. The American assault is disintegrating under the rain of German bullets and bombs. Hemmed in, under fire, the men are easy targets for the German gunners. But there is help from other Allied soldiers inland. The night before D-Day, more than 1,200 planes lift off for Normandy. The Allies want to protect the infantrymen on the beaches from a German counterattack. So they launch a major preemptive airborne assault. This is the 101st Airborne. Pat Macri is a 20-year-old paratrooper. By the time he returns to England, 1 in 5 of his comrades will have been killed or wounded. Pat's plane nears the drop zone.
Stand up! Hook up! Stand up! Hook up! Stand up! 6 okay! 5 okay! 4 okay!
Is everyone okay?
Hundreds of paratroopers now land in water, dangerous enough on a normal parachute jump. But these soldiers are each carrying over 100 pounds of equipment. Each one's survival depends on escaping his harness.
On D-Day, Allied paratroopers landed on either side of the beachhead. Americans on one side, British on the other. The American equipment was released with 3 buckles in a strap. The British had a single quick-release mechanism that enabled them to get out of their harness. The British paratrooper got out of his harness in just over 5 seconds, while the American paratrooper is still fighting to get out of his.
The parachute entangles the men. The harness is now a death trap.
You had to clear yourself of the chute, because the chute could collapse over you. If you did nothing in a few seconds, that would be the end of your life. Tremendous hazard.
Of the 13,000 paratroopers who jump, hundreds drown.
We lost a lot of soldiers, good people.
For many soldiers, the design of their buckle is the difference between life and death. On Omaha Beach, one quality found on the field of battle is about to change history: sheer bravery. "10:30 a.m., D-Day. The invasion of Normandy at Omaha Beach is collapsing. But one man has been watching from offshore. he sees that without leadership and belief, the mission at Omaha Beach will fail. At 51, he's the oldest soldier there. General Norman Dutch Cota.
Cota knows he has three priorities. One is to inject some leadership, two is to get his men off the beach, and three is then to take the attack to the Germans.
When General Dutch Cota arrived on Omaha Beach, he faced an almost impossible task. American soldiers are pinned down on a narrow strip of sand, trapped by Germans on one side, the sea on the other. Weary and wounded, they're close to giving up. Now, Cota must inspire them to believe they can win the battle. To get off the beach, they must climb a hill and cut through barbed wire, a job that's already cost him lives. The first part of Cota's plan to get off the beach works. They blow a hole in the barbed wire barrier. But waiting near the top of the hill for them is an MG-42 machine gun, firing 25 bullets a second.
Imagine you're Cota. For the second time, you found yourself in a moment of crisis. One man is shot, screaming in agony. Your other soldiers watching on, their resolve wavering.
Cota shows his resolve with a now famous remark. "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed." He then deploys the best weapon at his disposal, leadership, and is the first to run up the hill. One commander's decision leads to action that inspires his men. It will prove a major turning point in the battle for Omaha Beach. Cota leads the charge. Meanwhile, 10 miles offshore, another critical decision is being made. After hours of holding back, the Navy commanders finally give the order to engage. The Frankfurt turns broadside and fires. The attack begins. General Cota and his men have broken through.
The man was fearless.
Supported by naval fire, they cut a route inland. An army of men can now pour into France. And the liberation of Western Europe begins. During the next 24 hours, Rifleman Hal Baumgarten is wounded on another 4 occasions, 5 times in all. He would recover from his injuries, but one wound lingered.
I had severe guilt for surviving because I kept saying, why me? A lot of people, when they pray to God, they say, why me? Why have I got this disease? Why isn't God helping me? But in my case, it was reverse. I said, why me? Why did they die and I survived?
No one knows exactly how many American soldiers died at Omaha Beach. Historians estimate over 2,000, with at least that many wounded. And Omaha was just one of 5 beaches where the Allies landed that day. In all, some 10,000 Allied soldiers were casualties.